All right, the test review 5A, question number 10. Okay. It says a package is shaped like a rectangular prism. The height is 5 inches less than the width, and the length is 45 inches greater than the width. Right. So part A of this problem, you want to label the dimensions of the box in terms of x. In other words, what's the height, what's the width, and what's the length. We want to know these dimensions. That's all they want. All right. Well, we go up here, it says the height is 5 inches less than the width. Okay, and what's the width? We don't know yet. And the length is 45 inches greater than the width. You notice that both the length and the width, and the height is dependent on the width. All right? And since we don't know what the width is, we're going to call it x. Now we have something for the width. So now we can come up with the height. The height is 5 inches less than the width. So if the width is x, the height is 5 inches less than. Well, less than means subtract. Therefore, it will be x minus 5. The length is 45 inches greater than, so that means plus, than the width. So if the width is x, the length is 45 inches greater than, so it'll be plus 45. Okay. So on the actual test, on the test 5A, you're going to be giving a statement very similar to this, and you got to figure out which one is going to represent x. Well, find out as you're reading it, two of the dimensions is going to be dependent on one of them. All right, so see how width appears twice? Width is part of the height, and width is part of the length. So that means the width will be our x. And now you can come up with your two expressions for your height and length. So that's what you have to do for part A. Part B is write an expression, all right, in standard form, keyword, words, that represents the volume of the box. All right, expression, standard form, and volume. All right, volume is length times width times height. Well, our length, width, and height is, we'll just go x times x minus 5 and x plus 45. Order is not important. I can go x minus 5 times x and then x plus 45. I just like to put this first. All right. That's my expression. That part's done. And the volume is done because I'm multiplying them. But this right here is very important. It says standard form. That means I have to actually multiply this out. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to FOIL these two. So I'm going to do x times x, x squared, x times 45, negative 5 times x, and negative 5 times 45. So that's negative, I have to get the calculator here. I'm having a brain fart. It's 225. Alright, so then I have x. So it'll be x squared, so that's 45 minus 5 is 40x. Okay. Now I multiply the x through, so I get x cubed plus 40x squared minus 225x. There, this is standard form. All right. So this is the expression, and now we're just taking these three dimensions, multiply them, so that gives me the expression and the volume. But for standard form, what that means is you have to multiply it out, and then you'll get this. Make sure you combine like terms, and there you go. So that's what you need to do for part B. All right. So we're looking for this statement. We want to see your work, and then we want to see the end result. All right, part C. It says, if you know the volume of the box is 9,000 cubic inches, solve the possible values for x. Well, in the previous, in part B, we know what the volume is x cubed plus 40x squared minus 225x. We know that the volume is, and they're actually telling us that this expression is actually equal to 9,000. All right, so now we want to solve. All right, so that means I got to bring this over here. So x cubed plus 40x squared minus 225x minus 9,000 is equal to 0. That's what solve means. Solve means you set it equal to 0. Right. Now I have 4 terms. Since I have 4 terms, the only way I can solve this is by grouping. So I'm going to group these. So in this first group, I can factor out an x squared. So now I get x plus 40 on the second group, I can factor out negative 225. So that gives me x plus 40. Okay. Notice these are the same, so that means I did it correctly. So I write that. Cross those out, and what I have left over is x squared minus 225. Well, you notice here is 225. Let's see here. All right, 225, that's 15 times 15. So this right here is difference to square, so I can factor that some more. So I got x plus 40. I have x minus 15 and then x plus 15. All right, so now this is factored completely. So now I'm going to take each of these and set them equal to 0. So I got x plus 40 is equal to 0, x minus 15 is equal to 0, and then x plus 15 is equal to 0. All right, so here I subtract 40, so I get x is equal to negative 40. So there's one answer. Here I add 15 to both sides. There's another answer. Here I subtract 15 from both sides. And there are, so here are my possible values for x. I got 3 of them. All right, part D, which answers do not make sense in terms of this problem? And explain why. Well, we're dealing with volume, and we're dealing with measurements. And so we know that measurements cannot be negative. So therefore, x equals negative 40 and x equals negative 15 do not make sense because you cannot have negative values for dimensions. So, using the appropriate solution, part E, the appropriate solution is our one with the positive answer, x equals 15. So the dimensions of the box, well, if you go back to the very first problem, part A, we know the height is x minus 5. So that means it's 15 minus 5, so the actual height is 10. The width is x, so therefore it's 15. And the length is x plus 45, and therefore that's 15 plus 45, so that gives me 60. So here are the dimensions. 10 by 15 by 60 is the dimensions of the box.